The Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, has released some secret documents about the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant from its archives. 33 years after the accident, the world knows what happened at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, but it is still not fully revealed how the party leadership and special services tried to hide the truth about what happened. This video is part 2, in which I talk about what terrible secrets were hidden from us. I'll post a link to part 1 in the attached comment. One of the most terrible episodes of the Chernobyl disaster was the May Day demonstration, which was held in Kiev and other cities of the USSR, poisoned by radioactive fallout from Chernobyl. The KGB documents devote the following fragment to the demonstration in Kiev. For the period of preparation for the May 1 demonstration, school pupils were given training suits in which they rehearsed a program on April 27, 28, and 29. From May 5 to 8, these costumes were handed over to the schools. The clothes have a fairly high level of background. The schools intend to turn in the costumes to the Palace of Pioneers. There is a need for decontamination. From the certificate of the 6th Department of the Kiev and Kiev Region KGB on the operational situation in the capital of Ukraine and in the places of accommodation of the evacuated persons, May 8, 1986. But such an attitude towards people, to say nothing, to pretend that everything is normal, not to panic, did not apply only to Soviet citizens. Not only residents of Kiev, but also tourists from the United States, became accidental victims of Chernobyl. Tourists from the US group, 31 people, notification I-4812, living in the Hotel Rus, in the morning of April 29, 1986 tried to buy tickets to Leningrad for an early departure from the city of Kiev, put pressure on the hotel administration. Through an active reserve officer and agents, the situation was normalized, and the group left for the tour. From the report of the 2nd Division of the Ukrainian SSR KGB in Kiev and Kiev region on the situation among the foreigners in Kiev on April 29, 1986. The KGB reports cite dozens of other cases in which foreigners attempted to urgently leave Kiev. Most of them were students from Iraq, Sierra Leone, Kenya, Togo, and Guinea-Bissau were waiting for help from diplomats of their countries, while KGB agents tried to convince them to stay in the city. Completely new and unknown to the general public is the post-accident period, i.e. what happened at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant after the shelter, a protective structure that isolates from the spread of radiation particles, was built over the destroyed 4th power unit of the plant. One of the published reports of August 1, 1991, more than 5 years after the explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, describes the consequences of such a large-scale nuclear disaster. Few people, except experts at the time and now, know about the existence of the so-called Southern Trace, the radiation-contaminated territories of Ukraine below Kiev along the Dnieper River. The spread of the radioactive cloud after the explosion, in the most contaminated areas the radiation level is higher to this day. Here is what was known 5 years after the accident about the impact of radiation on public health in the town of Bielotserkva south of Kiev. Morbidity among children has increased by 30% over the past 3 years. As of January 1991, there were a total of 18,459 children on the clinical records, including 415 children evacuated from the Chernobyl zone, which is 17% higher than in 1986. The impact of unfavorable factors led to changes in the immune system of children, which is confirmed by the growth of allergic diseases by 39.7%, an increase in the number of newborn children with deformities of various degrees of severity. The number of handicapped children increased by 400% compared to 1986, from 57 to 228. At the same time, there is a growth of oncological patients. As of January 1, 1991, the number of oncological patients per 100,000 people increased from 964 in 1988 up to 1315. Oncological diseases of lungs increased by 32%, breast by 32%, genitals by 200%, circulatory system by 35% in comparison with 1989. Because of the lack of necessary technical base in medical institutions, ultrasound, computer tomographs, etc., oncological diseases are mainly detected in the stage of metastasis multiplication, which does not allow to use surgical methods of treatment effectively. Due to the lack of modern diagnostic equipment, according to experts' calculations, the city loses more than 2 million rubles annually just for cancer patients. Not long ago, this data was classified, the scale of the explosion, the amount of radioactive substances that spread as a result of it, right down to which organizations are involved in the liquidation of the Chernobyl accident, as well as information about how much these works cost, should have been classified, says historian Oleg Bazhin. Today, according to some estimates, the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant has cost the Soviet Union budget up to 200 billion rubles in prices as of January 1, 1990. And all of this at a time when Gorbachev needed funds for perestroika and economic modernization. The most interesting section of the book is the post-accident documents. Information on the horrendous negligence in burying the radioactive wastes is relevant today because the radionuclides from the waste burial grounds get into the Dnieper water and underground waters, continuing the negative effect on the human health. The fact is that after the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in a 30-kilometer zone, as well as on the site of construction of a new city of power engineers instead of Pripyat, Slavutich began to remove the top layer of soil, which was impossible to clear from the radiation contamination. This earth was buried in burial grounds, but they were not properly equipped. Building materials with extremely high levels of radioactive radiation also went into the burial grounds, as many buildings in the exclusion zone were demolished. Radioactive graveyards, according to the documents, were placed where it was necessary, in ravines and pits, and not only on the territory of the 30-kilometer exclusion zone around the plant, but also outside it. The burial of a large part of the buildings and constructions, as well as the contaminated soil, on a giveaway basis, without preparation of the waste burial site, resulted in the creation of more than 800 temporary radioactive waste localization sites not meeting health safety regulations, concentrated not only in the zone, but also outside it, many of which now require additional documentation and corresponding passports, one of the archive reports of 1991 says. A year earlier, on June 20, 1990, one of the reports says that there is already an excess of activity growth, radiation activity is meant, in the surface confined water bodies and groundwater due to migration of strontium-90 and other radionuclides. As specialists note, spontaneous processes of leaching from the fuel matrix of radionuclides dispersed over the territory lead to a fixed increase of the rate of entry into groundwaters, which may cause contamination of the entire Dnieper basin, where about 35 million people live. Many documents of this period speak of the need to build a complex of facilities for the processing of radioactive waste, since the removal of activity by groundwater is becoming increasingly important. Measures to block this route of migration from such a large area are currently beyond technical possibilities, from a report of August 28, 1991. However, nowhere in the published documents does it say that this plan was implemented. Obviously, after the collapse of the USSR and the economic problems that began, the equipped burial ground, in the documents it appears as a project with the codename Vector, was never built, and water pollution from burial sites not equipped for this purpose continues to this day. We have sought in this collection to show how they wanted to hide the truth. From the analytical reports, it becomes clear why the Soviet Union collapsed. It was Chernobyl that brought the end of the Soviet system closer. In our documents it is evident that the Special Services staff recommends the highest party leadership to destroy Iron Curtain and to strengthen international cooperation because the Soviet economy lacks the capacity and scientific potential to provide appropriate effective control over the consequences of a nuclear catastrophe. Methodological manuals for employees of the KGB stated the need to lift restrictions on the exchange of scientific and technical information, which at that time did not reach the USSR, as well as the need to resume closer relations with the United States to be able to engage the international community to solve the problems arising from the nuclear disaster, says Oleg Bazhin. One of such problems was the object shelter, the concrete structure over the destroyed by the explosion fourth unit of the power plant, designed for 20 to 40 years of operation, was recognized leaky already 2 years after its construction. The first signal of possible destruction of the sarcophagus structure was recorded on January 5, 1988, although the shelter protects the environment from gamma radiation to some extent due to the fact that it is not airtight. Aerosol emissions from the collapsed surface continue, reaching their maximum values during northwest winds. The absolute values of these emissions have not yet been determined. Nor will they be determined, according to the documents of the Chernobyl KGB dossier, in the future, even though pollution continued and could have been avoided because of it, already after the accident. When the West insisted that the Chernobyl nuclear power plant had to be closed, it was the right thing to do, because it was clear even here there were emergency shutdowns of operating units, but they could not say that we were behind in this plan. April 26, 2021 marked the 35th anniversary of one of the most devastating man-made disasters in human history. If you were interested, thank the author by putting a like. And also do not forget to subscribe so as not to miss the outputs of even more interesting videos of my channel. Turn on notifications by clicking on the bell and share this video with your friends. What else interesting can you add to this video? Write in the comments, it will be interesting to read.